All right, I'm back. I had to change the titles. What I'm doing last night, I read from the other poetry book, Where Our Feelings Go to Die. Tonight, I'm going to be reading from Poetry Most Foul. And I got my Snake Man, smoking a cigarette, taking a break. And I got some owls that are trashed. And so, where the hell is my... And that's what I'm going to be reading from tonight, is my book, Poetry Most Foul. Let's see here if I can. There we go. And now I can put on some. Shoot. All right. Doesn't matter. I'm going to be reading some poetry. Man, last night got pretty intense with the poems. So, yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed. That's all I do with my content is post poems. And I like to do wide-ranging perspective. I don't know if everyone caught that last night, but the people who stayed did. So I like to do a lot of different perspective poetry, and try and get in the mind of somebody else that's opposite to me and read poems in that manner. But tonight, I'll be reading from that book, Poetry Most Foul. Yeah, here. Well, I guess we can do that. And I'll go over, there's an about the author section. I'll start there, I'll read that. This is all wit and humor. I can't do a serious poetry book for the life of me. The author has spent most of his life on a back patio in the suburbs. He lives happily with his dear wife, Lila, her Rottweiler, and his beloved poodle, Penelope. When he's not writing the next great American novella, he can often be found sipping iced tea under a pink umbrella while reading the newspaper. He claims his inspiration comes from his flower garden. Shh, the secret is in the soil. Despite this, the author has an affinity for all things foul. And of course, with this book, there is author notes here. What did I put in here? Oh, yeah. Leopold Isdor, to whom wisdom are words, and words are but another catalyst to his profiteering scheme. And, oh, yeah, there's some author notes in here, which I must read before I even read it. So there's no litigation. I don't want to get into a lawsuit again, like I did last time. I regretfully must inform the reader of this literary work that when I originally had this book published, I went with a less than reputable printing press. The ink they used contained high doses of lead, and unfortunately, some of the copies were doused in poison, known and otherwise unknown. I apologize in advance. I hope I haven't caused you any inconvenience. If this book does not contain exactly 107 pages, then I'm afraid you've received one of the rare editions coated with cyanide. Whoops-a-daisy, these things happen. Sorry, no refunds. My suggestion: if you did in fact purchase one of these books, do not stick it in your mouth. Rather, give it to a friend who's been annoying you lately, or the neighbor's dog. Really, who should put up with such noxious behavior from a foul-smelling creature? Hope you enjoyed the read. Sincerely, the author. There we go. And we'll start there. I hope you guys can hear me from there. I will read. We'll put it next to one of my others. There we go. That makes more sense. this, well, yeah, this book I really enjoyed because I got to put new poems in here, but there's an older poem section. Oh, here we go. I'll read the opening since no one's tuned in yet. It's what I wanted to do last night, but I'll read the opening to the book. Good evening. Before we begin, I was asked a question by a former colleague of mine about the book. I felt the astute nature to answer it. What is poetry most foul? Is it an indecent act? Words which specifically intend on demoralizing or corrupting the viewing spectator? Though I cannot say. I will refer you to the great mind of a prophet and clairvoyant who unfortunately could not see the end, and was hung in 1842 by a group of parishioners seeking a return on their investment. The blunt truth instrument, the street rapper, the incoherent screamer, and the paid performer have always seemed to me positively indelicate. Poetry is a fine art and needs the embellishment of a sophisticated imagination. The true aficionado prefers to have his nerves ruffled by the implied threat, the bourgeoisie rather than the syndicate. What is more delightful than a domestic, well-read poem when it is executed with subtlety and imagination? I leave to other more pedestrian talents materials based on the audience's account. True poets, alas, most of them are dull and give no evidence of the careful planning and loving thought that should go into any human activity as rewarding as poetry. Artemus Whitmore. It gives me great pleasure to now introduce to you a poetry book of an unusual nature. I have collected the most foul literary writings humanity has to offer, and compiled the collection of the inner workings of some of the most infamous minds, ex-convicts, priests, street babblers, politicians, thugs, mother-in-laws, etc. The contents of this literary collection are intended to inhibit a vulgar response or a sensation of a moral indifference to right and wrong. There is a large segment of the species Anthropus that revels in just such a sensation. I know, for many years, purveying the ingredients of the macabre has been my livelihood. The contents of this book may even induce a sense of horror or shock by such foul writings. But rest assured, you will remember the poems with either pleasure or trauma. The trauma you will experience is expected. I, however, am not certain for the reason of this pleasure. They tell me that we are descended from some marauding prehistoric monster. Perhaps so. I am not an anthropologist. I do, however, know that if man wishes to stay on a self-righteous path in the 21st century, he must satisfy his primitive instincts in a more civilized manner. That is, and should be the purpose of this book. If you are timid, you will find a good selection of The Dog's Big Day at the Park or How Giraffes Smile at your local bookstore. If, however, you enjoy tingling excitement, lock the doors, close the windows, turn the page, and begin. Now, without further ado, I present to you Poetry Most Foul. There we go. And I did this in sections. Let's see. I'll read, since no one's tuned in, which is, I guess I was supposed to start at 10 anyways. Tuned in earlier than expected. I did several plays for this, all in an attempt to get people to show up for a poetry night. And so I made them all unconventional, and I had an abortion doctor. I did a murder mystery one. I had an occultist. What did my one friend showed up as, a vampire or a zombie? I don't quite remember. I was very vague about all of it, but everybody showed up as some sort of outlandish character I had a cannibal attack somebody on stage one time. And then, God, I don't remember all the characters. There were just so many of them. But what was it called? A Night of Poetry and Occultism or something? Yeah, it's been a while. I did a few of those shows, and the cast changed every time because everybody just started arguing with each other by the time the show began. But oh well, it doesn't matter now, I guess. But I had a lot of fun doing them. A Night of Occultism and Poetry, and then I made these posters for them, and I drew in big crowds, and then people showed. On the first one I did a packed house, and people were kind of upset halfway through that it was poetry, so they left. But the people that stayed called all their friends, and literally halfway through the show, half the crowd left, and then the crowd doubled or quadrupled in size. We had standing room only, and people out the door like what the hell is this? And they wanted more of it, which if I could have found the right cast, I probably still keep doing it. But it was really tough trying to convince people to do such theater performances. But the hardest part is that I never wanted to use theater performers. Theater performers were even more difficult to work with because they wanted to use, it didn't come off as authentic. Number one, but number two, they wanted to, everybody wanted to put in their own input, either way, but at least people that weren't actors, they sold it harder, But then I always had people that I would grill them hard to make sure they weren't questioning things. Anyways, I'll read. Yeah, they were a lot of fun. What did we do? We had a cannibal on stage that one night, performed an abortion on stage. I poisoned the entire cast one time, and they all dropped dead. And then my ex-wife, I think, murdered me at the end of one. And then I was a ghost at one for a murder mystery. That was fun. I was throwing things at people the whole time. So, God, 13 minutes in. Not one viewer. That's fitting for Poetry Most Foul. All right. Poetry to be murdered by is the first section. It is not my intention to end the nightmare, only to explain it. This first series of poems is for those who have found themselves in the unfortunate circumstance of no longer breathing. On the upside, for those who have found themselves in the fortunate circumstance of finally venting their frustrations with the wife, ex-cohort, the neighbor's dog, business partner, etc. Whatever it may be, you should find this section of the book to be quite enlightening, if not a bit enthralling. I'll read the first poem out of this. Wow. Not one viewer. There's the artwork I did for it. The Incurable Scream. The Torturous Soul, and this one's called Funeral March of a Marionette. I've probably read it before on here. The torturous soul, I abandoned my hope in dust-filled thoughts collected while I sat, waiting to be used again by the hand that grasped a stick and moved my arms and legs in a twirling dance. But no gesture was given to this immortal soul. I felt tossed. So whilst I lay empty inside a final finale of my demise, slowly withering away in the box they forgot me, I hopped out of my coffin, popping nails. These splintering old bones became limber, and decided to remove myself from this dismal existence. Good fortune happened to abate me. My master was gone. He left the fire in the furnace lit, brightly burning with a violent thought. So I waltzed in a jolly old stroll and thrust myself into its unforgiving embers intently. No emotions expressed but one morbid and searing, until I was charred. Oh, wait, hold on. Smoldering into ash, out with the trash. Goodbye, cruel world. Close the curtain. Take a bow. The show is over. Sincerely, the Marionette. No more. Geez, you'd think I'd have that one memorized by now. All right. But I am laying on the floor like a giddy little schoolgirl. Wow. Maybe there's something wrong with it here. Tick, 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 tick. Thy moral, and this one's called Thy Moral Cake is Good. Thy moral cake is good, or spoiled are the eggs before it has risen. In the yeast lie the benefits of nutrition. 'Twas never meant to be enjoyed a crumb at a time. 'Tis best when chilled to a certain flaming degree. Then served to friends in slices who partook in this foul deed, moist and delicious. Or even better still, before the sweetness grows bitter. Stuff your face on thy own pudding, you immoral swine. Eat it up not by the spoonful, but grab a handful. Fill your belly on the poison. Before the milk has a chance to wilt and sour, let it turn and stew in thy entrails, fat and gluttonous elf. Thy moral cake is good. I had the great James Matthew Byers read that poem for me once. Let's see what else. I will read, here we are. I'll go to the next section, Poetry from the Grave. We are children of the night. In flight we unite in games of ghoulish delight. This next series of poems is self-explanatory. It is a collection of literary writings that were written by authors on their deathbed, either it be a poem of an idealized utopia in the afterlife, or what hells await a two-bit hack who couldn't make it in the real world, as often the case is for a writer. Let's see. I'll show you the piece of art I did. There we go, the skeleton man. The future is coal. This first one's called The Politics of Trees. Tyrants of cold weather, their breath is frost, a blast of arctic air. When their fingers snap, old man winter gets up. Giants of the fall, statues waiting for the thaw. In the shadows, deeply rooted issues are discussed, grounded in reality. Hearts harden the warmth of aspiration. Now life ceases to a crawl. Firm, poised, pungent views, weighty gestures, heavy brows, rigid and coarse. They hear nothing, only the squabbles of candid opinions which do not concern them much. Observationalist by an inherent nature. Grief. Rules of the long day. Contemplative for an indeterminate period of time. Standing tall on these issues, then, when it all turns gray, they sit and they wait. Fierce is the face of winter, alive, forwarding the temperature of a tumultuous season. The dreary sax plays on into the next year, and the year after, the old rise again. That one was a lot of fun. This band actually picked up my books and they started reading my poems before shows, which was pretty cool. And that was one of them they read, that I know of that they read. And then I'll do, let's see. I'll go to the next section. This section of the book is called Poetry for Muggers. The greatest con ever committed wasn't by a convict, but rather by the man who sold me religion. These poems were acquired by less than reputable means. You may be asking why I have such a scrupulous section titled in my book. The simple answer is, even the delinquent needs an outlet for their frustrations. In legal terms, it is my hope that I have given them this outlet, not a means to an end. I shall did art for that one too. The bat. I will read this one here. This one, people really like this poem. I was kind of shocked. This poem I wrote in like kindergarten or something. Like one day I found a book I made, and I kind of remember making it. It wasn't for school or anything. I just made it for myself. And it had all these poems in it. So I typed them all out on the computer. And I didn't change a word. This is what I wrote in kindergarten. It's called The Color Red. Have you ever had the blues, lost a pair of well-worn shoes, thought about the night, but things keep getting strange? Caught out in the rain, your problems ain't really your own. The man at the corner says to go away, but you stay there anyways. One thing after another, it's a crying shame. Saturn with all its rings, backwards on a frown. I'm tired of all the clowns living day to day. That's what I chose to write in kindergarten. And I'm going to keep going. I still have zero people have tuned in for this. So maybe I offended too many people last night. But I'll be back tomorrow anyways. I'm going to try and do one of these during the day to see if I can get more viewers, you know, which isn't typically my goal, but I like sharing the stuff with people. This next section is called Poetry in the Act of Revenge. Revenge is best served to a certain flaming degree. The act of revenge, or rather the result of one's actions, and to what extent it was received. This section is dedicated to those progressive thinkers who may have been misunderstood by their respective life partners. And I shall read whatever I want. Well, it's kind of nice not having somebody butt in like while I'm... Here we go. I'll read this one. It's called The Final Scream. And it has a piece of art with it. Wait, where did I put that? Why is that not in there? Oh, there should be a piece of art with this one. Anyways, here it goes. The Final Scream. The girl who cried wolf paid a high price for those who she had deceived, for the girl didn't realize she was a sheep. One day the girl will cry and no one will come but the wolves who prey upon the weak, and all that will be heard is the final scream. And I had... Well, it had a... Why is... I think it's just missing the art. What in the world? Oh. There it is. That was for that section. The Hands of the Sea. I don't know if you can see it too well, but that was the piece of art I did for that section. And anyways, here's another one from that section. I wrote this on a rainy day when nobody showed up. Nobody wanted to hang out with me. It's called Day in My Head. If no one remembers me, I'll spend the day in my head. Slow-moving pictures of my earthly essence, drifting into the abyss, decaying, dancing with death. Windows betray, they show but rarely do tell. How do you define a life that does not exist? I call upon rivers undying to no end, trapped in strange dreams where the sandy dusk of my visions fade and happen again. By my own admission, my thoughts, which have led me here to a cliff. In this section of the book, the next one is titled Poetry of the Atomic Age. In the aftermath of the atomic age, there will be no poetry, for poetry will be controlled by interceptors connected to wires attached to levers. The future is bright and gleaming, and it will only get brighter than the sun, in fact. However, not for the cheery reasons you might think. No, unfortunately, it will be filled with radioactive contaminants, a byproduct of the fallout. And then there's my piece of art for it. The Surrealist Dream in the Atomic Age. I really like that one. All right, I'll read the first poem in that book, in that section. It's called The Thing for My Lover's Use. Inside it crawled to the surface, fermenting joy in a lab. The reconstruction of two hearts melted. The sifted goo scraped off the top. The paste beaded with a steel whisk, lashing, refiltering. The radiated shadows of long walks, my written muse, an automated process. Love, a substance consumed for eerie desolation, stirred in a cesspool of dearly missed you. Wires now attached to my emotions, connected to levers and buttons. Stereophonic static speaks the Roman language, a structured frame surrounding the organic process. And I really like this section. This was the newer section, but I'll read this one too. It's called The Oppressed Omen. Always sad, always crying, always dying. The season's dry must breathe our feelings into the stale air to come. The warmth struggles for survival against the fading amber tides on the horizon. Tasteless dreaming has soured the spirit into nothing. The dysfunctional apron causes no new gleaming. Paralyzed, awake in darkness. Never moving, never growing, never expressing. Only suffering for the longing to which both ends yearn this desire, complicated by the endless seasons. There we go. Still not one viewer tonight. I think that's the first time this has happened. The only other time I can think of, I at least had like one person, one or two people tune in. Anyways, this section is titled Poetry from an Insane Ex-Lover. She loves me not. I think she loves me just a little bit too much. This last and final section of poetry is indeed from an insane ex-lover, though I had to have her locked away for her inconstant behavior. She left me with a collection of some of the most delightfully dreadful poems you shall find in this book. There we go, and just because of the cheery nature, I will read. Where did it go? Here we go. This poem is called So Cold. I've never known a woman like you to exist. You're so cold, so damn frigidly cold. You keep all your love for me in an icebox. When you speak, I see frost. What does a fella have to do to warm that heart of yours? Light a match and set you on fire? Sometimes you get so confused. You act like we're not even in a relationship. I'm beginning to think your love for me is unreal. I tried to call you last night on the telephone. The operator says I got the number wrong. I show up to your house unannounced and try stumbling in. Seems you've changed the locks again. When you finally do answer the door, you wave that piece of paper in my face. Make me feel like an uninvited guest. What's with the attitude? I can take the hint, you know. It's just that I don't get it. You act like the world is closing in when I ask for a kiss. Your eyes are an infection, an affliction I suffer with. I guess I'll go if that's what you want me to do, but that's not what you want me to do. You and I both know that piece of paper don't mean a thing. There we go, and now the intermission. It is now that time when we have reached the halfway point. I hope you have enjoyed the book thus far. If not, then why are you still reading? There are better things you could be doing, such as playing cribbage or digging a hole in the backyard to solve your problem with the neighbor's dog. If, however, you still have enjoyed reading up to this point, I think you will find the second act to be just absolutely charming as the first. I can almost guarantee you will be delighted with what I have in store. There will be more poetry, witty remarks and humor, and wall-to-wall ad space. So stick around and enjoy the matinee. You won't be disappointed. That is, unless, of course, having a Sunday picnic at the park with your family is more your cup of tea. And for the next section, I included this one, that was a fun piece of art I did. It's I forget what the Rorschach test. I think there's a name for it, the ink blots or whatever. And I'll skip over that section because it's kind of a long one. Oh yeah, that's where it came from, this book. I'll read the conclusion, and then I'll see what we got left. But conclusion. We have reached the end of our journey. Thus concludes our poetry book. I hope you had a good time, as did I. After the book will be more advertisement to fill up the blank pages left over. You won't want to stick around. It is the worst form of advertisement, political. But again, I had to find a way to pay for this book and get the lawyers off my back. And then it's got an excerpt here. While I was at the Louvre last summer enjoying Leonardo da Vinci's ex-girlfriend, a great salesman stood next to me and said, "It's not art, it's advertisement. You've been duped." Which brings me to the next portion of the book, our sponsors. Unfortunately, it is the only way we can pay for some of the more extravagant theatrics found within the pages. My suggestion, while the advertisers are trying to pitch you their latest gadgets, play dead. And now a word from our sponsors. Wow, we're a half hour in, not one person. And I won't read the whole thing, but there's one of my favorite poems. If you could smile more, the company loves to hate you. That was a fun ad. And then more ads, more political ads. Voter suppression is on the way, the likes of which you've never seen. Yeah, just more ads. And then I did a section in here. Acknowledgements page. Alfred P. Hitler, no relation, possibly on my mother's side, maybe, we're not sure. A fourth cousin removed, I think. And yeah, other people I acknowledged. And then it's got the word appendix section, in case you need to look up a word and you don't know what it means, like trauma. How I feel after dealing with an audience of illiterate barbarians. Torture, the act of retrieving information from an incoherent or difficult source. And then the Oxford knife, commas, and other nonsensical writerly devices, in case you're really illiterate. And then I did, let's see, oh yeah, that's a whole shtick. Ampersand, the unlearned and confusing way of shortening an already dull-witted conversation in literature. The colon and its sister cousin, the semicolon. This should be self-explanatory enough with the description given and only used when all other means in literary writing have failed. Oh, the cats. The cat's here. All right, cat, do your thing. I think that's the end of the book. But anyways, no one tuned in, but that's all right. You had a lot of people last night tune in. We'll see. I'll try and do another live video this week, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I've been posting one thing a day, something every day. I mean, since I started this journey like 4.5 months ago, at least in the shorts department, sharing all the poetry. So I kind of slowed down, started doing live videos. But if you like my content and you're actually watching this after I upload it, yeah, feel free to share it with someone who you think might like it, even if you don't. What? No. Cat. Hold on. All right, I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. No, that's just me. No one. Have a good night.